Okay, so a quick look at the tools that we're going to need for this job. These aren't comprehensive and some of them you might not have to use. But for me what I'm using is a brake pad retractor tool. A little tool to get the clips off the wheels. I need a T30 for the little bolt of the disc. A couple of screwdrivers for just helping you get connectors off. Extensions, you need a 15 spanner and a 13mm spanner or a 13mm socket. You need to torque that up, so socket's going to be helpful. A little plastic hammer was useful for me to get some of the sockets in the bolts. A ratchet, obviously new brake pads, new caliper carrier bolts, the little retaining springs and a sensor. Also have a copper brush. Obviously we're going to need the disc there, some brake cleaner and some lithium grease. In addition, we also have a jack, something to rest your knees on if you want to, something to release the wheels, and then I've got a hub grinder and a wheel grinder as well to sort of clean the mating surfaces as much as possible. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is put the car in wheel change mode. So turn on the ignition, go to the car menu, we go into car systems, do servicing and checks, and put your air suspension in wheel change mode. So you just do that and then turn the ignition back off. Okay, I have to apologize how dirty this car is. The next thing we're going to do is we got to make sure the handbrake gets reset, and we need to plug into the OBD port, which is the pink plug over there. So you just plug that in like such. That powers up your code reader. You kind of need to have a code reader that is able to do this. So electronic parking brake, European, Audi. Okay, the audio went on the recording, so what I'm doing here is I'm going through the menu on the code reader to retract the handbrake all the way. This is an absolutely necessary step. I'm using a code reader here. If you have VCDS or OBD11, you can do exactly the same thing, just a slightly different step. The process is that you use it first to retract it all the way, then you do the work. After the work is finished, you set them back. Once that has been done, you will see in the dashboard the handbrake light flashing, and the handbrake button will also have a flashing light. And things like hillside assist and everything else won't be available because your handbrake has effectively been disabled. And other things will happen, like you won't be able to lock your door and stuff like that. So let's start real quick first by positioning the jack. The jack needs to be positioned underneath here. You've got a little arrow on the sill over there, which is really hard to see, but you'll also see like a plastic mount there. That's where you want to put your jack under. Once it's up, we have to release the wheels. We're going to use a little puller tool, take these pieces out, and then take the wheel off. Obviously you also need your safety key to get the wheel off. Just make sure, as I showed before, that the car is in jack mode, and that you've used some sort of tool to retract the brake winders for the handbrake.
Okay, so we'll be replacing the discs and the pads. You know, they're not too bad as it stands, but I'm changing everything around at the moment, so I figured why not? And also it gives me a chance to make another video that could be helpful for some people. So we're going to start by taking the brake caliper off. We've already reset this using the diagnostic piece, so that's pulled back using the handbrake motor. The first thing we're going to be doing is take the speed sensor off and release it from the holder here, that metal clips, and slide it out here so that we have space in a bit to move the brake caliper as well. We're also going to be taking off the brake caliper wear sensor, disconnected here and disconnected in the back here. Then we'll take our caliper mount off, then we'll take our brake disc off, and then we'll refit everything. So let's start with the speed sensor first. So for the speed sensor, I am going to use a little screwdriver wedged in like that, and then use my other hand to pull it out as well. I'm going to need 2 hands, so I'm going to put the camera on the tripod real quick. So we'll just slide this out. There we go. So that's all ready now. You don't need to disconnect any other electrical connectors on the handbrake or anything. In fact, it's recommended not to. So next thing we'll do is the brake sensor. Okay, so the brake sensor itself, similar sort of thing. So we're going to put a little bit of a screwdriver in here so that we can take the plug off. The bottom bit slides down. This stays in place. Once we've disconnected that, if we look at this from the top, you'll see that the connector has like a little tab there. We're going to have to pull that up, twist the sensor, and then we can slide that out. It'll make more sense when you see the new sensor that comes with it. If you then work back, we're going to take this cap off, and we're going to simply slide this out, which shouldn't be too hard on these cars. Let's do the top of that. Okay, so we're going to just take this little tab, screwdriver under it, lift up. It doesn't need a lot. You'll see it when you have the other sensor available to you. And then this should twist, all things going well. Let's try that. There we go. Okay, so you see it's out of the hole now. Twist it 90 degrees, and then it should slide out like that. The next thing we do then is we just take this cap off like that. Just pay attention to this because that's where the wire will have to go back in, yeah? And then this should be able to just slide out. Again, you might be able to use a screwdriver for a little bit of leverage. Up. Okay, so that's that out. So just a quick one then on the sensor. You know, the way these things work is that if your brake disc is wearing out, eventually it will create, you know, it will rub through this wire, which will break the circuit. And that's what makes the warning light go up. So as long as this is still here, right, you don't have to replace it because it'll just slide right back out. You know, you just check it for damage, make sure everything's okay and it's clean, and you can reuse it. That said, the set that I got, it came with 2 sensors with it, so I'm going to replace it anyway. But yeah, I mean, you wouldn't have to do it unless it was damaged. Okay, so let's get the caliper off. Okay, so for getting the caliper itself off, you got to release the bolt here and the bolt here. You got a 13 mil and a 15 mil. The 15 mil fits on the first bit here, so that you can lock it. 13 mil fits here. So let's give it a bit of a knock, so it releases it nice and easy. Same here. A little bit of a knock. There we go. Releases it nice and easy. Let's just push that back so we don't damage it by accident. Okay. So once these are loose, it should come off pretty easy. These bolts are disposable. You do have to replace them in principle. They have a thread lock on, which will be wasted once you take them off. Again, my set came with all the supplies sort of fitted with it to change out the pads, so it has new bolts with it as well. So I've already retracted this, so it's actually going to be pretty loose, right? Because the handbrake piece has sort of made a little bit of a lift there. So I'm going to take that off and then let's secure it in a safe way. Okay, so what you want to do when you take this off is you want to make sure you don't put any undue stress on the brake line itself, so don't leave it hanging around or anything like that. On the other hand, you know, it's got air suspension, so you're not got any springs to sort of hang it on with these sort of hooks, so you got to get a little bit more creative than that. So just lift it off like that. What we're gonna do is we're gonna just use a couple of these hooks. They're cheapy little hooks from eBay, which is like, I don't know, a pack of 20 costs like £3 or something like that. And I'm just gonna make it so it hooks up to the rear stabilizer, and that's pretty secure there. You're not putting any undue stress, it's not going to fall off, right? And you also give yourself a little bit of space to get this off. Next, let's take the brake pads off. So they're still tied in these springs. We're going to get these springs off like that. Again, you're supposed to replace these. I don't always, especially on rear brakes, I'm a little bit more flexible on rear brakes with regards to what you don't do and have to do, because they're just a less stressed item. Obviously these are big discs, they're still quite stressed, but compared to the front, you know, there is no real comparison to that. One thing that you'll notice, and I've seen this on both sides, one thing that you have to do, and I've seen this on the other side as well actually, is that I don't know if this was previously done wrong or if it's just rewound like this, but you see the entire cover here is shredded, right? So this is bad. It's something that needs to be fixed, because otherwise you're going to just end up running into trouble later on with your parking brake getting stuck or something like that, or even your calipers getting stuck, resulting in like very quick wear and heating and all sorts of issues that you might have with that. Unfortunately, due to the coronavirus, Audi parts stores aren't open anymore, and so it's going to be really hard to get a hold of this. So I'm gonna install everything that I have as is, and I'm gonna make this another job on my list. It's not like I'm driving a lot anyway, because we can't go anywhere. So let's take the caliper mount off. So next thing for us then is to take the brake disc off. So for that, I'm just going to use a Torx. It's a 30. This shouldn't be too tight. Loosen it. There we go. Leave that there. And we can take our disc off. So the next thing here is we have to make sure that the mating surfaces are as clean as possible so that we don't have any run out issues, right? Which are bigger problems on bigger discs and bigger wheels and all those sort of things. So you want to clean this really thoroughly. So in the past I would have used this, well, not a copper one, I would have used a metal one, cleaned it out thoroughly. Recently got myself a little new toy, so I'm just going to use my hub grinder to do it, and it's pretty cool. I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so I bought myself a little tool. This has it 4960 range. You've got a hub grinder and you've got a rim grinder. Pretty easy system. Velcro fit it so that you can really tight, because it has to be. So I'm going to take this one off. This one's a little bit more secure. It's got like guided pins in it, so let's put that on there. Press it in like that. I just got it on my drill. It doesn't need a huge amount of speed, just 500. Put it over your hub as such. So you see the finish that gives, it's just amazing. Cool. Okay, so I just gave things a quick little wipe. So you sort of see the finish that the grinder has. The idea here is not to, take a load of material off. It's just to make sure that you have a smooth surface. So in fact, as I feel over this, I still feel a little bit here. I'm going to give it a quick other pass, give everything else a quick wipe with some brake cleaner, which comes up nice. I'll do the caliper later, and then we're just going to put the disc on. So let's get to that real quick. Okay, let's get the disc put on. So this disc is not an OE Audi one. Again, A, it's really hard to get parts at the moment. B, this is a Padgett disc. I really like Padgett discs. I think they're great. They've got a nice finish on them, and I think they'll be just as good on this car as the OE ones. Now, I do have to say that I wouldn't say the same for the front discs. The front discs are a whole different animal, and I would only recommend going OE with those things. Again, it's a whole different stress level on these systems that you're playing with. So let's get that tightened up real quick. So this is you can be sensible about this. It's 10 Newton meters. I'm gonna just use a little torque wrench. 10, there we go. That's it. The reason I do that is because I've known for myself that I tend to over tighten things. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the retaining springs, put them on. So they're pretty self-explanatory. They go on like this, and you click them. Self-explanatory, says, and then they don't want to play there. Okay, make sure they're on well. Good. Same thing at the top. There go. They only really go on one way. Make sure they're well seated. And you see what we've done is we've effectively greased up the contact points between the springs and the caliper holder, and that's for noise reduction purposes. We're not going to do anything on these themselves. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to push the caliper all the way down. So I'm just going to use this tool for that. Even though, you know, it's a wind back system, you don't have to worry about that because we retracted the whole thing with the computer, which is a lot safer, because my thinking is that this damage happens from twisting. So you don't actually have to twist it down anymore. Once that's done, you can just push it down. So this is a twisting one, but I'm just using it as a pusher rather than... Come on. And it's supposed to go really smoothly, right? There's no lot of effort going on here. And we're just doing this until you feel it is all the way down. Right, see how smoothly that goes until it stops. And then you just release, take it off, and you're good to go. And we're totally gonna have to replace that rubber. A silly system really for a car like this. Anyway, okay. Get the brake pads put on. So I bought Techstar pads. I buy Techstar pads whenever I can, really. For the fronts, I bought a set of Brembos, because Brembo's the only one who makes them, because they're Brembo brakes, I think. But even the Brembos have Techstar stamped on them, so Techstar makes the brakes for Brembo as well. Okay, so we're actually a day further now. One of the problems I had is I hadn't noticed that the box had 3 pads in like this instead of 2 like this and 2 like this. So by the time I got that sorted, it's now the next day, so that's why things look a little bit different right now. So let's just fit the pads. The one with the sensor goes on the inside, the one without the sensor goes on the outside. So pad goes in like that, slide it up against the disc, and same thing on the other side. Make sure it's in the springs. Not sure why that's not. Okay, make sure they're seated properly. Cool. So, like I said, this rubber's damaged, so I'm gonna have to do that another time when I get the parts or when they become available. So let's release this. All right. Now this should, all things being well, just nice and easy slide on there. I'm going to use the new bolts that were supplied with this. Put them in. This side. Put them in. Same thing as when we were taking them off. Okay. Torque them up properly. This is 35 Newton meters. go. So you see that moves quite smoothly. There's plenty of space on there. So the next thing we're going to do is put the sensor on. Okay, so let's get the sensor put in. So the sensor, if you look at the sensor, it's got like this shape here, yeah? The thick shape goes towards the disc, the thin shape goes towards the inside of the car. And you see this metal clips there, it's not focusing well. That's really the point that slides on the brake disc, right? So just put that in, click, that's it. Simple as that. So what we'll do next is we're just going to guide it back through here. Remember the channel I told you about, which runs here. Put that back there. Then let me move the camera a bit. Oh no, you can see that there. Okay. So remember, this is a twist lock, so we slide it in sideways. He says up like that, and then we just twist it and lift up the little tab, twist it until we hear it click. See, that's in place now over there. Great. And then we just reconnect this like that. Okay, so you heard that click. That's the sensor installed. So the next thing then is we're going to reattach our cable for the speed sensor, which we took off to give us a bit more movement with the this is pretty tight. Alright, it's all the way in now. Okay, so then we just clip it back in, back under this metal clip, like that, and then we just simply slide that over, click, done there. I forget to take these things off. So that's it. Let's get the wheel back on. Okay. So the wheel torque is 120 newton meters. Let's get that in place. You'll notice I don't use an impact hammer to tighten the wheels. It's something that you should generally not do because you don't control, typically, unless you have a really expensive piece of kit, how much torque you're putting on there. And the wrong torque, too much or too little, can cause run out issues, or if you ever get a flat, can cause you not to be able to take the wheel off with whatever's supplied with the car, which is a whole different issue again. So, torque wrench, check the torque side, 120. For tightening these things is across diagonally every time. We'll release it. And double check the torque. There we go. That's that done. Now we have to go back in the car and use, put the clips on, we'll go back in the car and use the diagnostic tool to reset the parking brake. You want to do that before you start pumping away on your you want to do that before you start pumping away on your brake pedal. So let's go and do that real quick. Okay, so you'll see in the car now, you see that parking brake light is on solid, that's off, but let's put the ignition on. You'll see they start flashing again. That one's flashing as well. Close the door. Stop the beeping. I can code that out. Okay. Hill hold assist unavailable. So you get all these sort of issues. Okay. Brake pads. So we're gonna reset that now. So I'm gonna use my tool. And it's European Audi electronic parking brake. That's done. Okay. Yep. So we're gonna end the brake pad change. Okay, so fit wheels, check brake fluid level, top up as necessary. Okay, so that's successful. Now we'll pump the brake a little bit, gently, like that. And we turn the ignition off. Unplug it. Great. Now it does still have a brake pad thing on, so let me just real quick see what that is. Alright. I'll go and have a look and see what that is with the code reader real quick. Okay, so I just had a quick look around again. Rather than sort of looking at coding and stuff, I just wanted to double check that the sensors themselves were okay, and one of them was quite sort of tight, so I just unplugged it, replugged it in. So let's have a quick look. There, all works fine now. Handbrake works as it should. So yeah, if you have anything like that come up after you do the whole procedure, just double check your connections, because that seems to, you know, be a potential issue. All right, I hope that was helpful.